Did you know that more human beings will board a plane this year than at any other point in history, and yet almost none of them will say the experience felt good? Just 20 years ago, the world's airlines carried around 2 billion passengers annually. Today that figure has climbed past 4 billion, an almost unimaginable leap in such a short window of time. So here's the puzzle at the heart of this story. Airports are busier, planes are fuller, and routes stretch across nearly every corner of the globe. Yet somewhere along the way, comfort quietly disappeared from the ticket price. Understanding how that happened means going back to a version of flying that barely resembles the one we know now. The golden age that never truly existed. Picture the 1950s and 60s, when stepping onto a plane felt closer to entering a five-star lounge than boarding public transport. Airlines of that era marketed the skies as a playground for the elite, with wide seats, real cutlery, and passengers dressed as though attending a formal dinner rather than a routine flight. But that elegance hid an uncomfortable truth. Flying was reserved almost exclusively for the wealthy. Since ticket prices placed it far out of reach for ordinary families, the apparent glamour of early aviation wasn't really about better hospitality. It was simply the natural result of a tiny, uncrowded industry that hadn't yet learned how to serve the masses. When the skies opened up, everything shifted once governments, particularly in the United States, decided to loosen their grip on the airline industry and let market competition take over. Freed from rigid pricing controls, airlines suddenly found themselves fighting for every customer. And the fastest way to win that fight was to slash fares as aggressively as possible. The transformation in cost was staggering. A round-trip ticket that would cost roughly $800 in today's money back in 1979 now averages closer to $400, nearly half the price despite decades of inflation. Budget-focused carriers such as Southwest, Ryanair, and EasyJet rode this wave, proving that stripping away luxury and packing planes tighter could turn flying into something almost anyone could afford. The illusion of the cheap ticket. Here's something most travelers never stop to consider. Airlines aren't really selling you a low price, they're selling you the feeling of one. Behavioral economists have found that people consistently gravitate toward the cheapest headline fare, even when the final total, once bags, seats, and add-ons are tallied, ends up higher than a rival's all-inclusive price. This pricing trick has a name, drip pricing, and it works because our brains fixate on that first number we see. A traveler who would never willingly pay $150 for a flight happily books a $49 fare and then pays extra for everything else, piece by piece, rarely adding it all up until it's too late. The math behind the magic. Behind every rock-bottom fare sits a business that is, frankly, brutal to operate. For every dollar an airline earns, roughly 30 cents disappears into employee wages, another 25 cents evaporates in fuel costs, and a further quarter goes toward leasing, maintaining, and financing the aircraft itself. Once airports' fees and ground operations take their share, barely a few pennies of pure profit remain from each dollar earned. That razor-thin margin is exactly why ancillary fees, the charges for bags, seats, and extras, evolved from an annoying add-on into the very lifeline separating a profitable airline from a bankrupt one. With some carriers now earning more from fees than from the ticket price itself. One plane, endless passengers to survive on such tight margins. Airlines quietly re-engineered nearly everything about how planes and networks operate. Two aircraft families, the Boeing 737 and the Airbus A320, now dominate global short and medium-haul travel, largely because standardizing fleets slashes costs on spare parts, mechanic training, and pilot certification. Most legacy carriers also rely on a hub-and-spoke system, funneling travelers through massive central airports like Atlanta, Chicago, or Dallas rather than flying direct between every city pair. It's brilliantly efficient on paper, allowing airlines to connect hundreds of destinations with a fraction of the aircraft direct routes would demand. But it also means a single hub disruption can ripple outward across an entire continent within hours, a system with no room to breathe. That interconnected efficiency comes at a real cost. Almost no buffer exists when something inevitably goes wrong. Airlines push aircraft to spend as many hours as possible in the air, with some budget carriers achieving turnaround times as short as 25 minutes between landing and departing again. Layer on top of that a global pilot shortage that intensified sharply after the pandemic, since retraining a qualified pilot takes years of costly, tightly regulated training that simply cannot be rushed. It's this fragile stacking of tight schedules and thin staffing that turned a single 2023 database glitch into a nationwide ground stop, and a winter storm in 2022 into the operational collapse that stranded Southwest Airlines passengers for days. Lessons from the land of the rising sun. Not every airline chose to sacrifice comfort for volume, and Japan proves it beautifully. All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines routinely rank among the most punctual and best-loved carriers on the planet, hitting on-time performance above 90% despite operating in the same expensive global market as everyone else. Their secret isn't magic. It's a cultural commitment to investing in ground staff and willingly absorbing short-term costs to protect long-term passenger trust. So the real story of modern aviation isn't that airlines became careless. It's that most of the industry chose relentless efficiency over comfort, and now you understand exactly why. If this journey through the hidden economics of flying gave you a new way to see your next trip, hit subscribe and like this video so more stories like this reach you. And don't forget to join the World Documentaries family for more deep dives into the systems shaping our everyday world. We'd genuinely love to hear from you. So drop a comment below, sharing your own flying experiences, the good, the frustrating, or the downright chaotic, and let us know what industry we should uncover next.